must still draw the general license, but it's not a statewide general license anymore with that.
You can apply for a unit, but you can always modify that until May 8th.
So if you think I have 10 points, I got 10 chances in the random draw, that is wrong. You have one entry into the random draw.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin Fool magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin Fool today at huntinfool.com.
Well, awesome. Looks like we've got a pretty good number of folks in here. So just a couple of quick notes before we dive in. So obviously we're going to be talking a lot about Wyoming elk draw for this coming year. I know I'm going to personally learn a bunch of information from these folks at Huntful and try to figure out if this is the year that I'm going to use some of my points on elk in Wyoming. So if you want to kick it off and do a quick round of introductions, I'll go first. Dylan Dowson. I've been with onX for a little over 8 years now, and primarily work with marketing, Western big game marketing. So all of our ambassadors and the good folks that we have on this call kind of have some of those partnerships and relationships. So Garth, what about yourself?
Garth Jensen. I've been with Huntin Fool now for 9 years. A lot of my daily duties here is just answering phone calls with people that have questions about different places across the West, draw strategies, maybe where they need to go with the amount of points. I've been fortunate enough to be able to hunt Wyoming quite a bit, not as much as Logan, but a decent amount. So I'm kind of excited about this webinar.
Yeah, you bet. Logan Hedges here from Wyoming. I'm sitting up here in the snowy buggy right now. Yeah, I've been with Huntin Fool about eight and a half years now, I guess. And it's, born and raised up here in Wyoming. I know the state pretty well, so should be a fun night. If you have any questions, let us have them.
And I'm Austin Atkinson. I've been here at Huntin Fool for almost 9 years and have got to enjoy hunting Wyoming a few times, friends, family, and for myself. But I live here in Cedar City, Utah, and try to hunt and guide wherever I can out west. So that's me, and I just can't believe it's already 2024. So here we are.
For anybody on the call or watching after the fact, if you guys aren't familiar, if you're an onX Hunt Elite member, we are providing you a free digital membership to Huntin Fool. So that's going to get you an e-magazine, so their magazine online. I use that a ton, especially when applying for new states. It does have your typical hunting stories in it that will pass the time and get you excited for the next year. But it gives you a ton of information about each particular state and species, like how much is it going to cost? What do I need to know? And honestly, truthfully, I rely on the e-magazine for applying for new states. Like, if I'm really confused, all I have to do is read through that state in the magazine, and I pretty much have it figured out enough to be dangerous and apply with confidence. So check it out if you haven't already. It's super, super beneficial. These guys at Huntful are really humble, but I'll tell you from my experience, it's just been one of the most useful tools with me. I've been born and raised in Montana, so I've got Montana figured out. But as I look at new states and apply to new states, I always have a ton of questions. So whether I'm on the e-magazine or the previous tag holder list, that's just a couple of what they have to offer there. So we'll throw a link in the chat for Huntin Fool. Again, if you're an elite membership, you get a free digital membership. And if you're not taking advantage of that, you're missing out. So the second part of that is we have tonight's Wyoming Elk Masterclass. Obviously, we have a bunch of more masterclasses coming up. We've got an elk one February 7th, I believe, and then a deer one, antelope one, and a whole bunch more of these coming up. So stay tuned for those and get signed up. Even if you're not sure that you can make it, if you get signed up and register for those, we will send you an email, send you a notification after the fact with the recorded video. So get signed up for those, and even if you're not sure that you can make it.
Let's kick it off here. So like I said, it's amazing we're already here in 2024. And as Garth always likes to say, the only constant is change. And if you followed Wyoming over the past 5, 10, 15 years, change is just keeps coming, whether it's units, prices, fees, weather patterns, winter kill, could be anything, but you have to stay up on it. And we want you to keep in mind that when you may have started applying in Wyoming or started looking at that state, it could be an entirely different animal and different outlook right now than when you started. So it's worth looking at every year and seeing what's new, what's different, and decide if it makes sense to keep applying or to take your monies elsewhere. So tonight we're going to talk about new fees, how the license quotas work, how the draw works. We're going to talk about the new general changes to the general elk license versus limited quota, so that wherever you're sitting at, whether you're brand new with 0 points, or maybe you have 10 or 15 points, you can decide, is point creep hurting you, or should you keep applying? And we'll talk about the points only period, which is very important to remember. So that's kind of our schedule for tonight. Obviously, we'll save questions for the end. Make sure to throw those in the Q&A, but we'll try to answer a lot of them as we go.
So as far as just kind of taking a look at some of the fees and pricing changes, you can see here, the special elk license has jumped a considerable amount. I mean, last year, I think that came in around $1,200. Now we're going to be pushing close to $2,000. In fact, it's going to be over $2,000 by the time you apply, get your tag, pay the 2.5% processing fee, especially if you're going to go archery. Then you got to buy the archery license. So you can see that special elk license is a pretty considerable price just for the tag itself. And again, when they call it a special elk license, it's basically referring to the draw. So they have a special and a regular draw, and that regular price did not jump. That's the same price as it was last year. You can see it's pretty friendly to youth, but remember, that's only good. So that youth elk license price is only good in the regular draw. It doesn't carry over into the special. So if you apply your kids in the special, you're going to get dinged for that $2,000 or $1,965. So just keep that in mind. And when we talk about and we look at the reduced price elk, that's basically cow-calf license. Those are reduced price cow-calf licenses that we'll refer to later on. And then obviously the reduced price cow-calf for youth. But yes, the archery license down there, any archery hunt you go on, you do have to purchase that archery license, which is $72. That's in addition to the regular tag fee. And of course, everyone's going to hit you with a conservation stamp because we need that money.
Yeah.
Which is a little tricky for those of you that haven't played in this game in Wyoming or applying for elk. So basically they say, hey, we need your money up front by January 31st because we're used to getting that money at January 31st, even though we're not going to do any of the draw until May. So the modify with draw by date is basically, that's when they go in and they say, okay, all in, said and done. If you're going to modify your application, you can do so up until May 8th because they don't even conduct the draw until May. Of course, they post their results May 16th, then they start shipping out refunds. So just remember, if you submit, you do have to submit the entire tag fee when you apply for that elk tag. So if you go for the special, you're submitting lock, stock, and barrel, you're $2,000, and you ain't going to get refunded for that until May.
That's steep. And so I consider it an entirely blind draw. So they've kind of told us what's going to happen, but it's still pending a couple commission meetings. And they don't make residents apply until the end of May, after license quotas are set, everything's done. But they still like the non-resident money to come early. For whatever reason, they collect the interest. They like to get us first before all the other states, whatever you want to assume there. They make us apply in January, blind, if you will, and then tell us, oh, but you can change it later.
I think I know why. I'm coming to the conclusion they need all the non-resident fees up front so they can pay for that hay that they're going to go feed on the feed grounds. That could be. I don't know. I'm just going to throw that out there. But at any rate, they're going to take your money again in October. Well, July 1st to October 31st. Because remember, Wyoming is about the only state out there, if you apply and you don't actually draw, like if you don't draw, you still have to go back in and buy a preference point.
That's right.
You cannot, like, they don't issue you a refund minus that point fee. They just say, here's your entire tag fee back. remember to go back in during the points only period from July 1 to October 31 and buy those points.
Yep.
The big
I've got
question up is, should I apply? So it's either yes or no. I'm gonna buy points and save some money on my credit card, some space on my credit card by not applying. If you want to play in the random draw or you think you have a chance of drawing, then you should apply, but you got to make that decision early.
I've got one question that I've heard and kind of have myself, having not applied as a non-resident to Wyoming yet. I've just been accumulating points. Special or regular draw, what's the main difference there? Obviously special, you've got a better chance, but is that is there any like actual 2x chance, or what does that look like?
No.
It really depends on the hunt you're applying for. Some of the highly sought after hunts like 100, 124, 31, some of those areas, it flip-flops. You might have a better chance in the special 1 year and then better chance in the regular. The main difference there is 40% of the permits are distributed throughout the special draw and 60% are in the regular draw. So there's actually more tags in the regular, but because of the price difference, that's where you usually see the better draw odds. And especially when you get to say general elk, or maybe some of these hunts that are a little bit lesser, we typically see better draw odds. It's not a 2x. I can tell you that. I mean, even in the general, what was it last year, Logan, in the general versus special, or the general regular versus special elk?
It was less than half a point.
Like 4.5 and 5 points. So
Yeah.
not that big a difference. But again, that was at $1,200 and $700. We just turned that up another octave, and now we're going 2,000 versus 700. So we might see a bigger difference this year.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see a bigger difference in some of them this year. So maybe not, your maximum point units, but the general and some of these lower point units, there's going to become a gap just because of the price this year.
And remember, all them people that decided not to apply in the special are going to go to the regular.
Yep.
So it's just going to widen that gap.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit of license types. This is very different compared to some other states where an elk license is an elk license. In Wyoming, there is no hunting license like you may be used to in a state like Utah or Arizona, where you have to buy a prerequisite license and then apply for an elk permit. It's just called a license in Wyoming. So you have different types of elk licenses, basically 0 through 9, if you will, and they all mean something different depending on how they fall. So typically a license that's called full price, meaning it could be special or regular, but it's a full price license. And if it's type 1, 2, or 3, that's going to be an antlered or an any elk license. So this is mainly what we're concerned with when we're looking in the draw. These are your bull tags. These are trophy hunts. These are, whatever it may be, but that's a full price antlered elk that we're looking for. The difference between type 1, 2, and 3, it's kind of a sequential order. So if a unit already has a type 1, but they want to create a later season date or a modified portion of the unit, they may create a type 2. If they already have a type 1 and 2, they may create a type 3. And maybe type 3 would have an antler point restriction where it's 5 point or less. It could be anything they want. So it's important to check those carefully, because even though the unit doesn't change, the type means something different. Units or license types 4 and 5, those are antlerless permits, but they are full price, meaning you have to pay that full $707, for that regular license, even though it's a cow permit. Those are the reason those are different from the reduced price is to manage applicant pressure and to distinguish how many licenses you can have in 1 year. When you get into types 6, 7, and 8, those are reduced price licenses. So they're substantially cheaper for a cow calf license. And you can apply for a bull permit using your elk preference points. You can also apply for a reduced price antlerless license at the same time, and there are no points associated with that reduced price. It's a random draw. If you're already applying there and you're like, "Oh, I might want to throw in for a cow license if I'm already going there or just want a cheaper one," it's reasonably priced, about $300 for a cow license there.
Yeah, the biggest difference there, the 4 and 5, or their full price, they will take your preference points too. Where the 6, 7, and 8, it's a completely random draw, so it doesn't affect your points at all. So be careful there. We've had a few guys in the past draw type 4, not realizing it was an antlerless and burn 9 or 10 points, and that's pretty disappointing when that happens.
And it ain't easy to get it's possible, but definitely not easy to get your points back and send that tag back to Wyoming.
Yeah, not unless
You better break a leg or an arm.
Yeah,
or
you better fake an
something.
injury. Yeah.
So this is where we get some people hung up on the license types. Is a type 9. A type 9 license means it is an archery only designated season in the unit that you draw, and you do not have to buy that $72 archery license that's additional. You just get to go hunt archery. But once the archery season's over in that unit, that license is done. It's over. If you have a type 1 license, 1, 2, or 3, and it allows for special archery seasons, meaning earlier before the rifle hunt opens, you could buy the archery license for $72 and still hunt the archery season, even though you don't have a type 9, you have a type 1. So you just kind of have to look at that carefully and say, the unit I want, does it have a type 9, which means there would not be an early, well, there
There could be.
I should say.
Yeah, don't get ahead of yourself there.
I say would not be.
It gets pretty confusing.
There might not be a special archery season if you have a type 1, 2, or 3 on that unit, if there is a designated type 9, but there might be, there could be overlap.
Typically, when we see that overlap, it's usually the special archery season is later on. So let's say that typical archery only type 9 goes from September 1st to 30th. If they allow for a special archery season in there for type 1, 2, or 3 hunters, typically it's going to be like 15th to the 30th. It's just going to give those type 9 guys first crack at that unit.
Yeah. There is a type 0. They use it on some other species currently, and that's if it's a specialty weapon like a muzzleloader or handgun season, but there are not many of those available across the state in Wyoming.
For any species.
Most of them are the any weapon hunts or the firearm hunts, and then the archery only, kind of our two distinguishing there.
Yeah.
We'll say on any archery hunt, whether it's a special archery season or a type 9, you can use a crossbow, and no permit is necessary for that. Logan, you've got experience with that.
Yep, you bet. Just wrote that article on it. And yeah, I mean, the main reasoning behind it is elk numbers are really good in Wyoming right now. And, been a lot of people asked to have that change, but basically the state said they're not changing it when the majority of the units are over objective for elk. So they want people to have opportunity.
Hell yeah. So if you got a crossbow that shoots 5,000 feet a second, get up there.
Get after them. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit more about the license draw. Hopefully you're sticking with us here on this complicated process. They've took something that should be fairly simple and they've messed it up. So Wyoming, when they set in April a license quota and say, this is how many elk we're able to kill on any license type on this unit, then we're going to divide that quota up. 84% is going to go to residents, and they don't have a point system at all. They're just a random draw. Every year is equal.
Look at that big old slice of pie Logan gets to sit in right there.
Yep.
Right. So I still can't draw.
Then, because we've sent them so much money, they're going to complicate it for us. And they're going to give us 16%. I will say this is for limited licenses. They're going to give us 16% of the overall quota. Then they're going to chew that down into saving 40% of those for a special license. That category of those that have paid the extra higher fee. 60% of them will be saved for regular license applicants that paid the lower fee. And then we'll divide it up even further and give 75% to a preference draw, a pure preference draw. Those who have the most points that applied will win those licenses. It's a top down, kind of like Colorado. Whoever applied, it doesn't have to be max. It just has to be the max points for that unit for that hunt. They will get the permits and they'll start awarding them starting at the top, go down the point level until they run out of licenses. And 25% of those, or 1 in 4, they will save for a random draw. Anybody that applied either in the special category or the regular category is eligible for the random draw, but your points do not help you at all. So if you think I have 10 points, so I got 10 chances in the random draw, that is wrong. You have 1 entry into the random draw. If it's your very first year applying or your 20th year applying, you have the same chance in the random portion. If you miss the preference draw, they do slide you into the random and you do have a shot.
Yeah. It's a complicated system, but in my opinion, it works. Like, it does work. And I've been fortunate enough to have a few tags up there in Wyoming, and it's because of that preference draw system.
Sure, the preference does work. But now let's say you have to be careful if you say, well, I just want to shoot for a top hunt that has very few licenses available.
Yeah.
It's difficult to draw. I know I don't have the points necessary to draw, but I still want a shot. So you pay all this money on your credit card, hoping to hit that random draw. Well, when you start dividing up 16%, then 40, 60, then 75, 25, if there is not 4 licenses available at that bottom level, meaning 3 going in the preference and 1 going in random, if there's only 3 available, they all go in the preference draw, and there will not be a random license available, period.
And if you've got less than max, you're drawn dead. There's
Drawn
not
dead.
even a tag.
Yep.
No.
And you'll see that. We'll show you the draw odds on Top Rut. When it says no licenses available, that means there was no random draw, and
Okay.
you're essentially wasting your money applying for that if you don't have the points necessary.
You're better off just to wait and buy a point.
Much cheaper.
And that's where it's pretty critical to look at that once you have a chance to modify, because typically by then they'll have those tag numbers out and you can take a look at that and see what they're distributing. And then you can say, okay, this one's going to have 4 tags. It's worth it. Keep it in here. Maybe they cut a few tags and it's only got 3. Get out. I will say this one before you move on. The 16% over there looks pretty small, but nowadays I'm excited about 16%.
Yeah.
Being non-resident gets 16%. That's pretty good.
It
And
is.
I will celebrate that until Wyoming changes it.
Yeah.
Yep. Because we just lost a lot of the quota on the big species,
Yep.
sheep, moose, goat, bison. It's now a 90-10 split. So we only get 10% as non-residents of the big trophy species. So we're grateful to still have 16 here.
100%.
Does Logan want to speak to what he has against non-residents, or?
Personally, I have nothing against non-residents. love them coming spending money here. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it.
Okay, here, Logan, we want to get your insight on, we've given you all this information about the draw, but should I even be looking at Wyoming, and what do I expect? I heard the antelope and deer dying. Tell us about elk. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah. So of course, the elk, a little bigger animal, they wintered a lot better last year. I've lived in Wyoming for almost 45 years now, and I've never seen a winter like last winter for sure. One thing about elk, especially on the western side of the state where we were hit the worst with that winter, they opened up a bunch of special feed grounds for them. Fed a bunch of elk. Elk are easy to feed, not like deer. So they just went to throwing hay out, keep them alive, keep them off of private property. The elk did pretty good. They got hit in a few places. The southwest corner, they got hammered a little bit, but there was a lot of elk there too. I still wouldn't be afraid to apply down there, 106, some of those units. But for the most part, elk are still doing great in Wyoming. Objective or above in 90-some% of the units after talking to the game and fish and the biologists all this year. So talk about applying. Yeah, don't be afraid to apply. If you're ready to come hunt Wyoming, have the points, have the time, make sure you have time to come and hunt before you apply. a lot of guys that I talk to will apply, get a tag, and then they've got 5 days to come and hunt. It's just not enough for a good elk hunt. Don't press yourself if you don't have the time. Just build your points until you do. So try to maximize your experience and your hunt out here, because it's getting tougher and tougher to draw these tags. Even the general tag, it's going to take, it took over 4 points to guarantee it last year, and that's probably not going down any. Maybe a little bit in the special, but I doubt it, unfortunately. So it's going to take time, money. So make sure that you have that time to come out and enjoy the experience out here and have a good hunt. So as far as like predators, yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we got a predator issue in Wyoming, especially in western Wyoming, up around Yellowstone. Of course, we got a ton of grizzly bears up there. A lot of that's wilderness, which as a non-resident, state of Wyoming is not going to let you go hunt in there without a resident or an outfitter. You can go and fish, you can go and hike, you just can't go and hunt. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So, but we can discuss that later another time. We can probably talk for an hour on that. But yeah, the wolves, Wyoming's done a pretty good job controlling wolves. They got the predator zone. They get down here where I live. They don't last very long. They've actually upped our cougar quotas, which is good. We're hitting cougars pretty hard this year. Trying to save what deer we have left. Black bears we hunt pretty hard, but the predators they're doing all right in this country. So there's plenty of them. You come out and hunt, pick you up a black bear tag while you're hunting elk. Get you a wolf tag, especially if you're up in the northwest part of the state, and just have to check the quotas up there out of the predator zones. And but yeah, there's some opportunity to kill some big predators too up there.
Just not the biggest one.
Yeah, not unless he's chewing on your leg. No,
yeah,
or your buddies. No.
yeah.
The game management objectives, they've changed in places in the state. That's why they did the general regions. I mean, that's a start right there. In the future, they might break it up more, but for now, they broke it into 3 regions, an east, a west, and a south. So if you decide you're going to apply, which I think we have that in a slide here in a minute, you're going to have to choose a region this year. And that changes. It's both good and bad. I mean, probably the best part about it is there's going to be more tags available for non-residents. A little over 900 more tags are going to be available in the generals. But you're going to want to look that over and decide. You're going to be limited a little bit more of where you can hunt, where you can't hunt statewide. You can't hunt like 50 some units. You're going to have to either hunt the west, the south, or the east, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. So yeah, but they lifted the cap is what they did, is why they're able to do that, which they had a cap that was in there for years, 7,250. They had a cap. That was their cap on non-resident tags allocated. We got that lifted. We've been working on that for a couple of years, just so that we could issue more non-resident tags if need be. And so that's lifted this year, and there's not a cap on it anymore. So they can issue 5,000 or they can issue 10,000 now.
And that cap, that was for total limited quota tags and general tags.
That was for everything combined. So they cannot go over that. So they were right up there close to it every year. They just could not go over it. It was put in by the legislature, I don't know, years and years ago. I can't remember the date on it, but we finally got that lifted, which is good because elk numbers are good and they're having issues with them, especially on the east side of the state. So they can lift that and issue a bunch of tags in some of those units if they want to. So yeah, and then of course CWD outbreaks. We probably better not talk on this too long because I'll get mad. But they're trying to get rid of a lot of our feed grounds on the western side of the state. One thing that the state of Wyoming has done well, it's been a real success story. The feed grounds on the west side of the state. The Forest Service had some so-called experts do a study that they handpicked, kind of anti-hunters is what I'll call them, after doing some research on them. They did some they did a bunch of research supposedly, but they all basically had their minds made up already what they were going to write in that report, and said that they need to quit feeding elk out here in western Wyoming, need to shut down the feed grounds to save the elk. So, which is a little hard to understand. They didn't have any real good reasoning other than CWD. They said CWD is going to kill a bunch of elk, but it isn't going to make any difference if they quit feeding elk on some of these feed grounds out here. They're all just going to stand around and starve to death anyway. So Game and Fish, it's not Wyoming Game and Fish that's doing it. They're actually wanting to keep feeding. It's a Forest Service, federal government. They're just slowly trying to eliminate it. And if they do it, they're going to eliminate a lot of elk, and it's going to take a lot of opportunity away from all of us. So it's something you might want to look into if you're interested in hunting Wyoming in the future, especially western Wyoming out here. So.
Now, Logan, quick question, because the CWD over on the western side is not even close to as high a rate as what, and you're still talking about lower rates of CWD, but it's not even close to as high as it is over on the eastern side. Say in area 7, I think 7 over by the Lemry Mountains is probably the highest rate in the state.
Yep,
but the only thing that's, I will say, goofy about that is it's also, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but it's also one of the highest populations of elk in the state as well. And it has been for, I don't even know, like the last 15, 20 years, it just continues to be the highest elk population in the state, but also has the highest CWD rate. It just, to me, as just taking it for what it is, it seems like if the CWD is going to kill the elk over on the western side to make a drastic closure of these feed grounds that are basically sustaining a lot of these elk in areas, and keeping that population at a huntable level, I would think that case study would be area 7, where they've got the highest rate of CWD, but also the highest elk population. That just doesn't jive to me. They should be dead by now.
Yeah. I mean, they don't, all the studies they've done on CWD, there's no, it's never devastated a herd anywhere, deer, elk, anything. So, I mean, it's scary. I'd like to see them get some more things figured out on it, but they don't have a solution. They don't have a plan right now. Yeah, I'd love to see them put a lot more effort into a cure for it. If we could do that, and even a way to test them alive. They keep claiming that they have some ideas, but they don't. Everything that they test it's got to be killed to really truly test it for CWD. So I don't know. It's a scary deal, and it's a tool they're using right now to try to scare people. And it's the perfect example is just this last weekend. We were down south of where I live here. There was 500 to 700 head of elk in a group together down there, and that's their argument: is these elk are all bunching up in the winter on these feed grounds. Elk bunch up anyways in the winter. They're all going to get together anyways. That's how they make it. They're a herd animal, and so. It's going to be a big trickle effect. We quit feeding the elk. Some of these elk in a few of these places, Forest Park, they just don't have anywhere to go. It's going to affect the snowmobiling recreation, because they're going to have to shut all that down up there in the Grays River, because those elk are going to have to try to make a living up there. And like last winter, it had killed them all. There was just too much snow up there. They couldn't have got around. So that's going to affect, recreation. Nobody's going to be able to snowmobile up there. It's one of the biggest recreation places for snowmobilers in this neck of the woods. And then the elk that aren't getting fed are going to go down on deer winter ranges, and they're going to go to new places and make it tough on those mule deer. So yeah. So
I think there's a lot of things that will happen if some of these feed grounds are closed that I don't think necessarily they're paying attention to. Like you say, competition on winter range with other species definitely going to be a big impact.
Yep.
So yeah.
So it's something to watch for, and we'll see what happens. I think the Game and Fish, from a few of the meetings I've been in, they got some alternative plans if this doesn't go through. And of course, there's going to be lawsuits, and it's going to be a mess before it's said and done. So yeah. Well, let's move on to something else before we get too worked up about it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the big change on general. So 2023 and previously, as Logan mentioned, it was kind of a statewide general. And that didn't mean you could hunt everywhere in the state. That just mean you could hunt units that were open to the general license.
Right.
So every unit here in yellow across the state had either an archery general season or a rifle general season or both. The units that are not shaded in yellow are limited quota only. So you must draw those, and that's a limited license. The general is still limited. Sometimes we associate the word general with over the counter or unlimited, and that is not true. You must still draw the general license, but it's not a statewide general license anymore with that last year's quota of 3,419.
And that's that number I was saying, like the 7,000 number that Logan mentioned earlier was a statewide, and that included those limited quota areas that are in there. So yeah, we are gaining a lot of general licenses.
So this has nothing to do with our 16%, like we talked about before, splitting up a hunt quota into the 84-16 split for resident and non-resident. This is a totally separate quota. This is our general quota, and right now it's proposed with those numbers you see there. The Western region being having the majority share of the licenses, the Southern region having just over 1,000, and then the Eastern region having about 500. That's as it currently sits proposed. But when you apply for general, you must select a region and not just the general statewide.
And one other note on that, like you'll see those areas on the map that have those lines through them, that's wilderness area. So if you're not planning on hiring an outfitter, or you don't have a resident buddy up in Wyoming that's willing to take you in there and hunt with you, just remember those areas that have those lines going through them, everywhere where you see that line going through, that's off limits to you as well, because you can't go in there and hunt those areas because those are wilderness areas.
So Logan, how do I know if I wanted to do the general? I've got a couple points. Last year, the statewide draw was at about 4 preference points to be guaranteed or considered in the preference draw for a general license. So everyone's asking, what is it going to take to draw the regions this year since the statewide is gone?
Yeah,
let me see your crystal ball, Logan.
I've run a lot of numbers on that because I've had a lot of guys call, a lot of outfitters call, putting in hunters. You know, my numbers are showing that for the special draw, you're going to be really close with 4 points. I think it's going to be real similar to last year in the special. I've been really surprised by guys that I've talked to that really aren't that spooked by the price increase. There's some that are mad, and that I think we're all mad. We all hate to spend more money, especially this day and age, as expensive as everything is. But a lot of guys are just like, man, if it gives me opportunity to go hunt, I'll pay the extra money. You know, what's another $1,250? So I guess that's one way of looking at it. I do believe that the regular draw is going to go up. I talked to a guy today that's got 6 points, and man, I sure hope 6 points would draw that regular. I'll be really surprised if it doesn't. My numbers show that about 5, anything above 5 should draw in the regular draw. From the scenarios, just going off of how many people have applied the last 3 to 4 years. But the one thing we can't figure in there is the human factor. Guys just like me, I change things up every year. I look at numbers and be like, man, maybe I can sneak in here. And so I change what I do almost every year. So to answer that question, you're going to want I'd say over 4 in the special, and 5.5 would, I'd feel pretty good at 5.5 to 6 in the regular. So, which is,
and that's hard. That's hard because we don't, I mean, technically we have pseudo numbers for that southern region, like down there, for non-residents that have hunted that country down there. But that is such a wide or a big area for that western region. Just hard to say how many people are going to go into that. Is that enough tags? Like, because they did up the tags. That is more tags than we were getting.
There's going to be more tags, factoring that in. You know, that the southern region to me is the trickiest, because you got 105, 106, 107 over there. They're good hunts if you got private ground to get on. If not, they're tough. But then you get over in the Medicine, and there's some good country in there, but you throw 1,000 non-resident hunters in there with the residents, man, that's gonna be crowded in there. I mean, that country, there's a lot of guys that like to hunt that in there, and it's I think it's gonna be more crowded than ever. Honestly, that one makes me a little nervous. The East, of course, there's not a lot of country for the DIY guy out there in the East. Even, 129, 2 up in there. A lot of that country that's public up there is landlocked and it's hard to get to. So yeah, be real careful on the East. I think we'll see the East by far be the easiest to draw, but you're going to need, the odds are, unless you know somebody, have family, a friend, something like that has private up there, you're going to want to hire an outfitter up in there.
So people say, well, now what? I picked a region. We suggest jumping on your onX map, looking at these units that are available, obviously looking at private public land and the wilderness boundary, very, very critical when you're looking at a unit to hunt.
I would almost even say jump on the onX first before you select your region and just see how much public's in there.
Yeah.
Realistically.
Does it look like elk habitat?
Yeah. And
Yep.
then go about selecting that region.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say what the season dates are for general units because every unit is so specific. Okay, so overall, you're going to be looking at the month of September for archery dates on a general license, but the rifle season, some of them start early October, some of them start October 15th, some of them will transition to late season. You kind of have to narrow down the unit you want to hunt, find out which region that's in, and then look at the season dates from there.
Yeah, that's a wide array in rifle. I mean, you get some of them up there near the thoroughfare. You're starting rifle hunting in September, are you?
September 20th up in 70 and 60. That used to be September 10th when I was guiding in that country. Sure made you feel like a good elk hunter, shooting elk in 10th of September with a rifle. Yeah, and then there's the 26th of September opener on a few of those units, and then a few on October 1st, and then the majority is October 15th. So if you got the time, there's a lot of openers to hit for sure.
Yeah, like I say, pay attention to when they are.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask the question now before we go to limited, Logan. If I'm sitting at, say, 4 to 7 points, because someone told me to start buying them a few years ago, I want to hunt elk someday.
Yep.
Should I look at the general or should I look at a limited hunt if I'm sitting in that low point range?
The general hunt right now in Wyoming is really good. So the archery hunt is great if you like to archery hunt. You have a lot of options. People are spread out, especially like the western side, for example. There's lots and lots of options there. I've hunted several states over the years. I would say Wyoming residents are they're by far the most spoiled. I've been one my whole life, and they're probably do the least amount of archery hunting of any state I've ever hunted, just for the simple fact that you can go archery hunt in September. You can go start rifle hunting in the thoroughfare as a resident this September 20th. You got all these different openers for rifle you can go and hunt. I've got good friends of mine that I hunt with that'll go out for Labor Day weekend, talk big about archery hunting this year, go out for a few days, climb around the mountains, basically get their butt kicked because it's almost too early for the rut anyways. Come back and you ask them if they want to go next weekend or something. And no, I'll just wait for rifle hunt. So, because we got so many options as residents here. I mean, we're still hunting cows up here right now until the end of January. So, if you like to archery hunt and you only have that 4 to 6, 7 points, the general is really, really good in the west side of the state. Or if you like the medicine bow country in there, it's pretty hard to beat, because then you can turn around and if you have the time to do it and can get back out here, you can rifle hunt as well if you weren't successful in the archery.
If you are looking at limited, show you kind of how to use the top rut draws, and this is available to all onX Elite members. What you can sort there is based on the draw. So you'll see here in the corner, I've got it sorted by regular, top points down. I'm looking at type 9 licenses. So that tells me this unit, 38, for example, 38% of those applicants with 12 points drew the licenses last year. So if I had more than 12, it would have been 100% draw. Then you can also see the special odds as well, and random odds in between. You kind of have to sort the hunts that are available to you by your point level currently. For example, I have 12 points myself, and I probably could draw the same hunt now that I could have drawn 5 years ago when it was at 7 points.
Yeah.
Because I've waited and point creep continues, I'm not gaining access to a better hunt per se, because I fall in my bracket and there are thousands of people just like me doing the exact same thing. Over on the right-hand side, this shows how many non-resident hunters have that point level. So with maximum points of 18, there's 756 applicants still playing in the game with maximum points.
Oof.
And 10 years from now, there'll probably still be about 600 of those with 28 points. That is true point creep in a preference point system. So some people get frustrated and say, well, I'll never catch the top. It continues on forever. Well, I like to say, take the Garth approach. It's a preference point system. Look at the hunts you can draw at your point level and go. If the hunt you want, like here on the bottom left, unit 39, 100% at 12 points. What that tells me is everybody who applied with 12 drew. So it's probably not going to creep up to 13 points this year. It's probably going to stay somewhere close to 12 because it's satisfying the demand at 12. As long as there's not a huge surge of applicants with lesser points, it's probably going to stay about the same. Hunts that are drawing at super low percentages at a point level are going to continue to creep up, and you will not catch them unless you party with someone who has more points that raises your average.
Yep.
Or you, I don't know.
Well,
wait forever.
conversely, you look at 38, that top one, only 38% drew with 12 points. So all them guys that had 12 points that didn't draw, well, guess what? They got 13 points going into the next year's draw.
Exactly.
And so now you're going to be trying to catch them. So I always like to look at like, okay, this is depicting 2022. So I like to look at how many points did I have in 2022 or the prior year? Where was I at?
Yep.
Exactly. So if you look over to the right, a lot of our people we talk to are sitting between that 5 and 9 point range. And you look at each level, there's thousands upon thousands of applicants saying the exact same thing. And that's where it gets difficult to predict your true draw odds for this year, because a lot of those guys are just, oh, I'll pay the $52 and build a point. I'll build a point. And then all of a sudden they say, whoa, they're getting outrageous with fees. And 1,000 of those guys at your point level could jump into the draw and essentially flood it and throw the odds way out of whack.
Yeah, that goes back to that human factor. You just never know who's going to jump in there. Or maybe guys that have been building points and all of a sudden decided to draw this year, and they'll change those pretty quick.
It is pretty amazing. Like I've looked at tons of draw charts, and you start charting down the preference draw. You say, okay, everyone last year drew at say 12 points. So you go back in and you look at the next year's draw. Every time you look at that, you're like, well, everyone drew. Like it should be a fresh crop of 11-point guys going into it that have 12 now that didn't draw last year. But then you see them stacked in there like 2 applicants with 15, 3 with 14, 7 with 13. That's where you start getting into those. How many of those high point guys that jumped in are going to gobble up those tags? You just can't tell.
Nope.
So if you want to avoid the draw, points only. We've mentioned a few times at July 1st through October 31st. Even if you do apply in the draw and you're unsuccessful, they do not give you a point. And every year people will forget to buy a point because they said, geez, I gave those guys a few $1,000. They sent it back to me in the summer. I'm good. No, you are not. You have to go back in July through October and buy your point. So points for elk are $52 for adults and $10 for youth.
It's pretty good for youth.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a great price.
And you can start applying when you're 11, as long as you turn 12 by the end of that calendar year. That was a new change they made. So 11-year-olds through, your 18th birthday, you can apply as a youth in Wyoming. That kind of wraps up the presentation portion we had.
Cool. So we've got some questions. I'll kind of feed them to you guys. We've had some good registration questions and then some questions throughout this. I know a lot of them you guys covered throughout. just with the presentation. So as always, good job there. Question here. So applying as a party in Wyoming, do they average the points? Do you take the lowest point number? If I have 0 points, you have 10 points. Do we go in with 5, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's averaged in Wyoming. They'll average your points, and you can have up to 6 people in your party for a group. So, yep, it works out really good. So at times, if you burnt your points or don't have any, and you can find a buddy to let you have some of his, it can be pretty good.
Cool. So I think we covered this one pretty well, but this question says, would you go over some cow elk and reduce price cow elk opportunities, please? Anything additional that you guys want to add for more opportunity type hunts?
And one thing I will say about opportunity type hunts, when it comes to cow elk, reduced price, even if it's type 4 or 5 full price, anything to do with cow elk, just remember that that's usually a tool that the division uses is population management. So you can see in some areas where if they're chronically over objective, you might always have a significant amount of cow elk licenses, reduced price licenses, things like that. But just remember, if they do have a harsh winter that takes that population down, that might go from 300-400 cow elk licenses to 10. I mean, so from year to year, that can change. And just remember that's a tool they use. Bull elk licenses, that's not going to change your population objective much, but cows do. And so just make sure and monitor what those tag numbers are going to be.
Yep, there's a lot of opportunity out there for those reduced price cow calf tags that don't affect your points. The draw odds are getting a little worse all the time because more and more people are getting in on them. But there are some great opportunities out there.
I mean, Austin just got back from Wyoming, freezing his tail off and like blowing sideways, single digit temperatures, snowshoeing.
Yeah, he waited a little long.
Yeah.
Next question here. I know you guys discussed this one quite a bit as well. But I'm kind of personally curious to what point levels you think it might be. So with the 3 areas, west, south, east, Logan, I know you said something about 4 points in the special you'd feel good about and 5.5 to 6 in the regular. Do you have any estimations that would change based on like southeast west in that, or is that just kind of all encompassing?
I would throw that with the west and maybe the south. I think the east is going to be a little easier, I would predict. Man, it's really hard. I hate to throw too many numbers out there. Having guys call and getting mad at me when I didn't guess it right, because it is a guess right now. But from the numbers that we've run, from where guys have been hunting in the past, just going off of those numbers, it's gonna go up a little bit in the west and probably hold steady to go up a little bit in the south, especially in the regular. But I mean, it's time will tell. I can really tell you in May.
So I'm assuming this question was stemming from being new to applying to Wyoming. So should Wyoming elk be a short, mid, or long-term application strategy for out-of-state hunters?
I mean, I guess if it was me, I would view it more as a short term personally, just especially like Logan said, as good as the general elk hunting is up there. If you start looking at it a long-term strategy, like we kind of went over in some of the point creep and the numbers of applicants that are already in that as a long-term, you'll just be chasing a lot of these units for a long time. And just because it says 13 points right now, by the time you get to 13 points, it's probably going to be 20 points or more. So personally, I like the short-term strategy because I think you can go and have some really good hunts up there on the general hunts, probably as good as what you're going to have once you get drawn on your highly sought-after control.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I'd go more short-term. And what does short-term mean? Is it 1, 2, 3 years? No, not anymore, unfortunately. You're probably looking, the 5, 6, 7 points for the general. Hopefully this helps a little bit, get some more people run through the general with a few more tags. And in the future, there's talk that they may break these regions up even more like the deer. So hopefully they'll be able to add more tags in the future as well if they can keep these elk going good.
Well, I've got two more here, unless you guys have any on your end that you want to address. Again, there's a lot of good questions, but we covered pretty much all of them throughout the presentation. So this question here, is there any benefit of putting in for a limited unit, knowing I should have enough points for my first choice and then a second choice for the general season? In other words, if I don't draw my first choice, is there any chance of drawing a general license as a second choice?
That's a negative. I don't, they haven't drawn the second choice general for quite a few years now. Just remember that they pull all first choice before they go to any second choice. So if it's requiring any points at all, that means that there's nothing available for second choice applicants.
Copy. Last question I have here pertaining to party apps again. Can a non-resident party draw with residents to increase draw odds?
No, because there's no preference points for residents. So residents and non-residents can't go in together.
Copy. Any questions on your end, Austin? That
Yeah, we got a couple leftover tags. So anything that's not awarded in the May drawing for elk. And I should say they look at your first choice. So everybody's going to get their first choice on the application, even though there's 3 choices when you submit. Everyone will get their first before they consider any second or third. Any leftover after the first choice drawing will go second, third choice. However, there will be some leftover licenses, and a lot of those are going to be reduced price cow calf licenses or even some bull licenses, but there'll be private land or there'll be some tough to access units, not many. Those do go into a leftover draw. They'll open that the last week of June, and it does not use your points. But anybody can apply for that leftover draw, whether you participated in the first draw or not. But unless you're looking at a cow opportunity that still might be available, there's usually not a lot there.
And one question we get, now correct me if I'm wrong, Logan, because I think this is accurate, but when they have leftover draw, a lot of times if they're bull licenses, that can come from the resident quota that did not have enough resident applicants, and it'll be leftover. And then at that point, it is available to all residents to get, or excuse me, everyone, not just residents. It's available for all applicants to secure those permits. So if a non-resident applied and didn't draw, and then he sees there's leftover licenses, most likely that's coming from the resident quota. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah. The perfect example is like area 60, the type 9 up there. Like for myself, that doesn't, there's 20 licenses given up there. It doesn't do me any good to put in for that type 9 because I can go archery hunted anyways as a resident on my general tag.
Right.
There's no special preference given to that type 9. They don't get to hunt early, anything. It's just, it's the first shoe, the 19th. So there's no reason for a resident to put in for that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So there's usually 16 tags left over. That'll go into that leftover pool where anybody can draw them. So the downside to that unit is you're going to need a guide or a resident to go with you. Yep.
Bear spray.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. Bear spray and maybe some other tools.
Logan, there's a question here about, I've got a buddy who's a resident. What does he have to do to be my resident guide?
Oh, all he's got to do is get a resident guide permit. It doesn't cost him anything. He just got to go and show that he's a resident. He can guide up to 2 people or take 2 people. He cannot be compensated in any way by the rule. We actually just looked this up the other day for some guys. And he has to put down the names of the people he's taken with him. So that's got to be there, and he's got to have that permit or paper with him when they're out there hunting, and they have to be with him all the time. You just can't basically go pack into camp and then be like, hey, you guys go do your thing. So, yeah.
Another one real quick, Logan, landowner tags, right? Can you avoid the draw with the landowner tag? Can a non-resident own land and get landowner tags? Give us a brief explanation there.
Yeah, so non-residents, absolutely. If you own land, have animals using it, can show animal use on your land, you can get landowner tags. Landowner tags come out of that pool first. There's units, 22, for example, a few years ago, there was no chance of drawing it in the draw because all those non-resident tags were going to non-resident landowners. They've since changed that a little bit so that they're not gobbling all those up. But yeah, you can. There's a lot of non-residents that are doing it, and those tags are unit wide. There's been some guys lobbying to change that, but like Region G, for example, I think a few years ago there was 53 of the non-resident tags came off the top when there was 400 quota, so there was 347 tags left that went into the draw. So
Right.
yeah, absolutely. But the landowner tags are not transferable at all. So if you don't own land, they have to go to immediate family. If they get a landowner, if you get a landowner tag allocated to you, it's got to go to immediate family. Somebody just can't give it to me or to Garth or whoever, and they can't be sold by any means.
Last question I've got here is talking about draws. So in our e-magazine, which all elite members have access to, you can see the basic draws for each of these units based on 2023. There's been some questions. When will the draws be updated on the website? And that's going to be hopefully by the end of this week. We're still processing some of that data from Wyoming, where it's full applicant data, considering group applications, all point levels. So that detailed data that you want to look at on the 𝗙𝗪𝗏 and on the Huntin website is coming very, very soon. So we're just making sure it's as perfect as we can get it.
And again, remember that you can apply for a unit, but you can always modify that until May 8th.
Yep.
So even if we're going to get you the most accurate data out there, but once that's available, just remember, you can always modify it if you get some,
Yeah, the only thing you can't modify, and people want to remember, is you can't switch from the regular to the special. So if you put in the regular and then you decide, yeah, I really want to draw, so I'm willing to pay the extra money, you cannot modify into the special. You're stuck in the regular draw. You can switch units and hunt types, but you cannot switch over from the special to the regular.
Gotcha. Good stuff. I know I learned a ton tonight. Thank you guys for your time. And the only other thing I want to note for anybody else still on is we are doing a really cool Montana mule deer hunt giveaway with Huntin Fool. That's going to be available here within the next couple of days as well. So stay tuned. It'll be hard to miss it. We've got some emails going out, and through social media, we'll be talking about it throughout the next couple of months. So really cool Montana mule deer hunt. 2 folks, so we'll pick a winner. They can choose a hunting buddy or myself. You can pick me, maybe. Actually, probably not. I'd probably get in trouble for that. But you can pick a hunting buddy of your choice to come to Montana and hunt mule deer during the rut for this coming year. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, I appreciate everybody's time tonight for tuning in and learning about this. And then more importantly, your guys at Huntin Fools for jumping on and answering some questions and providing the education that you guys do.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Our
guys. Good
pleasure.
luck.
Appreciate y'all.
Sounds good. Good luck. Thanks, guys. See ya.